You good?
I'm good.
Okay,
I'm ready to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you had swallowed your drink is all. Because you had gone quiet, and I'm like, are you swallowing?
This one's just for you, Stuart.
I'm so glad we're getting this one.
Welcome to the Photo Op Podcast, the podcast where we give our opinions on all things photo and video. I'm your host, Ben Lucas.
And I'm Stuart Marlantis.
And this is Photo Op. And today we are talking about plugins. Are plugins still relevant?
I don't know.
Yeah.
We should talk about it.
I don't know. We should talk about it for a good 20, 30 minutes. How's that sound, viewer? Yeah, cool. That's what we're doing anyway, whether you like it or not.
Our MO.
Buckle up. Here we go. So, yeah.
What are plugins, first of all?
What are plugins? So, when you get a piece of software, let's just say Photoshop, okay? You get a piece of software and you're like, man, this piece of software is good, but I really wish it could do this. And it doesn't do that. And then some third-party distributor, they make some piece of software and they say, hey, what if it could, though? So then you install the plugin. So when you're working on an image with Photoshop, you're like, man, I need a really good film grain overlay. And then you fire up your plugin and you add your Kodak 400 film grain, and then your photo looks as hipstery as you want it to. And you're good to go. That is a plugin. So plugins, they can be compatible with pieces of software, or sometimes they're also standalone. Even when they're standalone, when they're so incredibly niche and unuseful as they're not full suite of software. It's not Photoshop. It literally, all I do is denoise your image.
Just one thing.
Even if that's a standalone, I still consider that a plugin.
Yeah, fair enough.
Let's just be fair. When it is something that is that incredibly niche, yes, it could be its own piece of software, but when they make it as standalone or a plugin,
or both, sometimes you can do either,
or both, then I consider that all plugins. So,
so we'll give a little rundown. What plugins do we use, if any? What do they do?
So here's actually why I started with this topic today, okay? I recently joined Modern Society, the current century, and decided to download and install the new Photoshop beta that has all of the AI that I've been railing about for weeks or months or however freaking long it's been. And one thing happened. A piece of software that I use all the time. First of all, it asked me, do you want to import all of your old workspaces and plugins and options? I said, yes, I do. I would like everything that I had before in the new version.
Sounds good.
Cool. Sounds good. Everything transferred over except one. I still use Nix software, originally made by DxO and purchased by Google and discontinued. Nix software has been compatible with every version of Photoshop I've used until now. So then I thought to myself,
ruined.
Oh, that really sucks. I'm like, but do I need Nix software? And I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, I do. I love it so much.
So what is Nix software for the people that don't know?
So Nix software, it is a suite of different plugins. I believe there's 6 different plugins or something.
Sounds all right.
Frankly, I only use 3 of them. But the ones that I use is I love the Color Effects Pro when you're looking at an image and it just needs a little zhuzh. You just want to add a little bit of
a little pop,
a little cross processing, a little bit of tonal contrast just to make it a little crispier. You just a little bit of something to finish off an image, right? And normally when I apply it's kind of like applying an Instagram filter, but I'm doing it on my computer because I'm not a hipster.
So it's better, okay?
So it's better. I am superior to you. No. So, but when I apply these filters, it's like if I took a really nice moody boudoir image, but I want it to just have some of those kind of crushed shadows or whatever, so it appears a little more gray because I feel like it's slightly too black and I want to give it that filmic image.
Yeah.
There's what is it? Color Pro something. But then there's also an analog thing where I can go and I can pick, I would like a Fujifilm 400, please. And I can apply the Fujifilm 400 look to that, and it gives me these really just gorgeous kind of red magenta skin tones while kind of crushing those highlights. And it just brings this overall warmth and glow to an image that makes that image her and her beauty and her skin is the focus of the image now, instead of, all the other junk around the bedroom for the boudoir image. So So there are some times where I'm like, oh, I really like adding this kind of like film look or this cross-processing or these crushed shadows because it's a look that I like and I think it's a look that complements that particular image. I'm not doing it to a whole batch, but sometimes this is a nice finisher.
Yeah.
And then there is a third one. There's a third one that I use. I hate doing black and white images. It's not particularly my forte. If you look at my work, not a ton of it. But I genuinely hate it because Photoshop doesn't do a good job of making black and white images. Yeah, it has sliders where you can pull your reds and stuff, but you're just kind of willy-nilly pulling stuff until stuff looks right. Versus they have, it's called Silver Effects Pro, part of Nik software. And it gives you a bunch of black and white presets. And these presets, they're specifically like film looks. But I pick one to start with, and I say, ooh, this one makes, I'll pick one, and I'll be like, ew, this one makes the skin, like, hard and crunchy and gross, but it might look great for, like, a waterfall landscape image. But then I'll pick another one, and I'll say, ooh, this one's soft and silky, and it makes her lips kind of this deep color, like she was wearing red lipstick, versus another one might make them, like, blow out and look gross. So I pick that one, and I drag those sliders, and I tweak it, and I just feel like it gives an overall better black and white image, because I have way more nuance and control over not only tonalities of the image, but the different areas of the image. And they just do a way better job at giving me a good preset to start with and tweak instead of me having to do all the work myself. So that was a very long explanation, but I love this software. I use it all the time, and now it's gone. So are plugins still relevant? That's coming back around to the main conversation. I talked about that for way too long.
Were you able to get it working?
No.
Oh, okay.
One of the perks of Nik software is you can right click an image and say open with, go to the exe file and open it directly from the exe file instead of it being a plugin. But yeah, it doesn't work as a plugin anymore. And it made my life really easy to go filter, Nik, color effects, add that as a layer. I can kind of do my masking and tone it in. And now I have to save it as a completely different image.
Google, can you at least make this stuff open source before you just cut it and kill everybody's workflow? Google just kills everything.
So I don't need to talk about that anymore. But that was the impetus for recording this episode, and made me think like, hey, do we still really need plugins? Because the other thing I thought about for this episode is, do you remember On One? I know there's still a company that exists, but I say remember because they're not relevant, at least not to me anymore. Yeah. On One made a suite of software products that I thought were really, really cool. And the one that really sold me on it is early days. They're like, hey, you want to do a really good sky replacement, but you have like a bride and her veil? There's no way in hell that Photoshop is actually getting all the detail in the veil. But look what On One can do. And I'm like, ooh, yeah. And they had a denoiser and a sharpener and an upscaler. I'm like, this is sweet. Well, guess what? I had that software for like 6 months. Then a new version of Photoshop came out, and Photoshop could do it better than On One.
Yeah, this has been a common theme, I think, with especially Photoshop plugins. Somebody makes a cool plugin, and 6 months later, a new version of Photoshop, they're like, cool, let me just copy your homework.
Yeah, but I mean, now it's all in one thing, and it's included with the price of admission, so why wouldn't I want that?
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. Like, I use a few different plugin or plugin adjacent, standalone pieces of software, but I've never been like a plugin guy, I guess.
I was a plugin guy. I had so many. There was one that I had where you could label all your Photoshop files a certain way, and then it would spit out an HTML file and give you a web page based on the build that you made, which I use WordPress, so that's no longer relevant. Yeah. And then there was another one, the plugin for Premiere, that gave you like a 3D camera that you could use for parallaxing. That's called After Effects. It's way better at it. So, like, yeah, there are some that I definitely do not use anymore.
One of the earliest ones I think that I used that I no longer use was Twixtor. That was pretty fun.
Twixtor was really cool because I could only shoot 30 frames per second, but then it could be like, ooh, now it looks like it's 120 frames per second.
Twixtor was really good, at least in the early days of reinterpreting video footage and adding a bunch of frames and then giving you sort of like it basically tried to give you slow-mo without shooting it in slow-mo.
It gave you slow-mo that wasn't super choppy.
Yeah. But it looked pretty good. I mean, like if you pushed it too hard, you could
get some weird,
get these
janky
smeary artifacts.
and...
But it was for something done in software, it was really good.
Why don't you use it anymore?
Because other things have replaced it, basically. So maybe it's still good. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing out, and I just like I paid for an earlier version many years ago, but that's been replaced by the Topaz Video AI piece of software now for me, because it has an AI based tweening interpretation engine that you can use for slow-mo. It'll do all sorts of stuff. It'll do upscaling. It'll do all sorts of different effects. But one of the things that it can do additionally is slow-mo. And I feel like two things replace Twixtor. One is that if I really need the extra frames, and two, cameras just like shoot slower motion now by default. Like once we got
you can shoot 120 frames a second.
Once we got 1080p at 120 frames per second in a lot of cameras, I was like, well, I don't really need Twixtor anymore. I'll just shoot in that.
Yeah.
And if I really need it, then I'll use Topaz Video AI, because in my tests that has been at least equivalent or better. And since I've paid for the new one, I might as well
use the new one. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely not to say that any of these on one, if you want to come sponsor us, show me what you got. Impress me.
Yeah.
Send me from free software.
Are your plugins still good?
But I bought your stuff a decade ago, and the version I have is no longer useful. So to me, it's irrelevant, right? It's been phased out. So yeah, there's definitely things that get absorbed by either just new technology or first-party implementation, and that plugin is now completely irrelevant. Yep. But there are other things that I still use Imagenomic.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Imagenomic is skin softening software. So it is basically if you're trying to make skin soft and smooth and photoshopped, retouched, people are like, oh, you can't do that. What you need to use is frequency separation. Sorry, brain just kind of cut out there. If you're doing high-end retouching, people say, no, you can't possibly use a plugin. You need to use frequency separation. Well, guess what? Frequency separation is a little bit difficult and time-intensive. And if I'm doing that for, let's say, a cover of Vogue magazine, sure.
Yeah.
That's the correct way to do that. But if I'm doing that to 800 wedding images... run a plugin. So the plugin, it does it gives you how do you want it on a scale of just ever so slightly 10% smooth to Barbie doll, and anywhere in between. And then it says hey, what is the skin tone of the person you're trying to do? And what we're going to do is we're going to select those colors and those colors only, so that hair and clothes and background do not get smoothed out and that detail doesn't get erased. In my experience, a little bit of the hair always gets erased, so usually what I do, new layer, mask it in, but it's still way faster. And so back in the day, I went to a Scott Kelby seminar, and he said, look, I could show you how to do frequency separation, but why would I show you that when I get hired by a client, I just click on Imagenomic and say, I'm done now. Yeah. Why would I tell you something different than what I actually use? And so is it expensive? Yes, it is. Is it totally worth it if you're a working professional? Yes, it is.
Did it survive the Adobe update?
Absolutely, because Adobe, actually, Adobe does have a skin smoothing thing. I will get back to you on that. But I used it yesterday.
Okay, so it did.
Yeah, it still works, unlike Nick software. Yep. But now I should really test to see, is it better than the AI? But the other thing too of it doesn't use AI. It's just hey, we're taking those tones and we're killing all the contrast on those tones and doing some smoothing and whatever their algorithm is for it. It's not introducing weird artifacts that AI might introduce.
And AI isn't necessarily better. In my opinion, it works really well for slow motion because you have to make new fake frames from nothing.
Yes.
And AI is pretty good at making
something
fake things from nothing.
Yeah.
And if it's a video where you've got many frames and you're never really focusing on each individual one, it'll do a good enough job. I think that's why Topaz Video AI is now the replacement for Twixtor in my case. But for something like this, AI might not be better. And that's fine. That's fine.
To be determined on that, but yes, it did survive the update. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
But yeah, plugins.
The other thing that I use...
What do you use
in the photosphere is Topaz's photo side of things, Topaz Photo AI.
Yeah.
I use that all the time. It has all sorts of different tools, but in the two,
like the denoising and the upscaling, and there's a focus fix one that you recently helped me with.
Yes, there is. So the two that I use most frequently are upscaling, and basically sharpening, that, or focus fixing. Those are the two that I use most frequently. They does have like facial recovery stuff. It does have denoising. The denoising is actually really good. I use that less, maybe because I shoot on Sony cameras more frequently.
All right. Flex all you want to. We know.
But I do use it occasionally. But truly the whole suite that it can do, they've all been fantastic in their own individual ways, and I use it all the time. Like sometimes, just almost because, like I'll crop in on an image and I'll be like, oh, this is pretty good, but I'm like, oh, I could run it through Topaz and it'll be just a little bit sharper, just a little bit better. So it works great for that because my Sony's a 24 megapixel, and so that's plenty competent. And we've talked at great length about, like, you don't need a tremendous amount of resolution.
Sure.
However, I don't have like super long lenses at this point, and so
you do
like,
a lot of cropping.
I'm often cropping in. I just have not been able to justify dropping the money on some like 600 mil lens.
So Adobe, this will be another good test maybe for a future episode. One of the beta AI things is, hey, do you need to super crop an image because you didn't shoot long enough?
Yeah.
We will upscale that part of an image for you, not the whole image, just that
part of it. Yeah. We should do a head-to-head test because I did see that pop up and I'm like, do I still need the Topaz thing? I don't know. But yeah, Topaz has been good. I really don't use too many others. I've used Neat Video a lot in the past for denoising on the video side. That genuinely is amazing, and I still haven't seen, on the Adobe side, at least so far, I haven't seen anything that holds up equivalent quality to Neat Video's denoising. It's fantastic. Well worth the money. I think it's like $100. Like if you're shooting a lot of video in low light, absolutely buy it. Like it gives you a tremendous amount of value. And then the last one that I've used more recently is Gyroflow. And this one is free. Absolutely free. Yeah. So what it does is, I mean, there have been various stabilization software out there, and obviously it's built into stuff like After Effects and Premiere. However, what Gyroflow does that's interesting is it uses kind of sensor fusion to figure that out. So lots of cameras, including actually DSLRs, mirrorless cameras, have they've got a whole bunch of sensors in them, but they've got sensors that record the motion of the camera when you're shooting a video or taking a picture. And they use those sensors in the camera to help compensate if it's got in-body image stabilization. They use those sensors to adjust, or they use the motion sensors to adjust the actual camera sensor and cancel out, handshake and stuff like that. And so that's very common on cameras, newer cameras nowadays within the past 5 years, but it's especially common on action cameras. So GoPros have had gyro sensors in them for a long time now. The new DJI stuff has that, and you can use this software to read that sensor data and look at the image.
So if I shoot something on my Canon, it won't work. But if I shoot something...
No, however, you can get little actually hardware additions that you can add to your camera to record that data, and then you can combine those in Gyroflow and cancel out that data with either cropping or enlarging or whatever. There are different ways that you can actually cancel out the motion, but you can use Gyroflow with that data to pick out those different ways and then get a super stable image. It works great. I kind of can't believe that it's free. A version of this did exist called Real Steady. Previously, I used that one.
I remember that one.
Yeah, Real Steady was really cool. It was very GoPro oriented. It was so GoPro oriented that GoPro purchased it, and theoretically, I mean, they still kind of offer it, and it's part of their
included
suites, but
in the suite of, like, if you download the GoPro editor, then you run it on it, and
and it's great, but there was not really a replacement when GoPro purchased it, and
it pretty much became GoPro only.
And Gyroflow is that replacement, and it works on like any motion data that you can get from any camera or any recorder that you add to the camera. It's really cool, and I can't believe it's free. if you have any stabilization needs, especially if you're running action cameras, check out Gyroflow. It does like some legit incredible stuff.
We are sponsored by none of the things that we mentioned.
Nope.
All the other ones you got to pay for, so go Google it if you want. But since Gyroflow is free, I don't feel bad linking that down.
Yeah.
So that'll be linked down in the description there for you. So plugins. What do we think? Are they still relevant?
Yeah, but it feels like the door's closing.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree with you on that one. They're more and more getting absorbed by first party, but I think it's also, could you even imagine a plugin like Gyroflow 10 years ago? Because cameras didn't have any of that kind of data, so it's not a thing that you could do.
No.
So I think as tech evolves, it's that thing of we'll have new needs and new things that we're trying to do, and you didn't try to do slow-mo 1,000 frames per second just because that wasn't in your consciousness that it was possible. Well, now it is. Yeah. So as technology expands and things expand, I think plugins are always going to be relevant because plugins essentially fill the gap in between what the big companies are doing and what everybody needs. Yeah. Once the big companies realize what everybody needs, they absorb that. But people are always going to have new needs, and there's always going to be plugins to fill and serve those needs.
Yeah. And I mean, at least, props to Adobe for narrowing this market. They use a small fraction of those huge piles of money that we shovel into them to compete with the plugin market and incorporate those things, or even purchase. From what I understand, they've purchased some of those, the work from some of those developers and then incorporated it. So hey, that's great. Like it's good. I think it's a good thing that the plugin market has narrowed. It means that big companies are listening to user needs, even if they're pretty niche needs, and incorporating them in the software.
And one of the things that I recently had a conversation with, not to drag AI into this conversation, but Adobe actually does a really good job with their training models, and essentially whether you accepted their terms or not is a different question. But essentially, all of their AI models are trained on internal things that they all have permission for. They're not just scraping data from the internet. No. So they're ethically sourcing AI, which also might be that when I tried their AI, it was a little janky and did not work for the thing I was trying to do it for. But you know what?
But I respect sticking to the principles, right?
Yeah, good job, Adobe. Have we done a whole episode on ways to replace you? Yes, we have. Do we still pay you money anyway? Yes, we do. So yeah, good job on you. I think you're absolutely right. Plugins will always be here. They'll always be relevant. But it's kind of the same way that, large factor cameras are never truly going to be replaced by cell phones, but cell phones can do way more than they used to, and that market is closing.
Oh boy.
So it's kind of the same thing. The market's closing, but I think there's always going to be a good place to add
good on you plugin developers. Like, we've paid money for your stuff because it's good and you're offering things that the big companies don't. Like, keep doing that.
As much as I rail against hipsters, I really love that Fuji 400 filter. Not gonna lie.
Just make a good Fuji 400 filter and you get Ben's money.
There you go. So to wrap up this episode, thank you so much for watching. We will see you next week. But before you leave, I would want to know, leave a comment. What is your favorite plugin?
Yeah, are there plugins that you use that are awesome that we don't know about? Like, we would love to know. Maybe we need them. Yeah, we'll use them. So
on your favorite podcast app of choice, or go find this video on YouTube. Leave a comment. Let us know what your favorite plugin is. I will see you next time.
See you next time.
If you have questions or ideas for future episodes, you can email us at hello@photo-op.show.
Watch us on Ben's YouTube channel at NomCreative.
As in Om Nom Nom.
Share this with a friend, and you can listen to Photo Op anywhere podcasts are sold.
Or download it. 'Cause it's free.